Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Dan's Models. This is John, and I'm here with Dan. We're looking at something that's familiar, Dan.
Yeah, this is my 1 to 20.3 scale Bachmann 3-truck Shay. Now we've had this on Dan's Models before as a hands-on episode where we converted it to battery power.
Yeah, wasn't Trevor on for that too?
Yeah.
Trevor from the Fern Creek and Western, right?
Right. But I... Hang on a minute.
Yeah, hard to compete with a locomotive that's blowing down.
Yeah, so anyway, I made a couple of changes to it since then, so I thought it would be worth it to bring it back on. For one thing, I put decals on it, so it's now TNSG number 7.
Oh, the TSG Railroad's growing still.
Yeah. So those are just from microscale alphabet sheets, the silver lettering. So, and I just, it's all done with individual decals, nothing printed or anything like that.
It looks good though. I mean, they're straight and everything.
Yeah, I just, use a straight edge, line them up and make sure that they look good. And I tried to look at some real Shays to see what logging companies did in terms of where they placed things. And so there were a lot of variations on that, but this is kind of typical.
It looks plausible to me.
Yeah. So that was one thing. Another change was in the front and the back. So why don't we take a look at those?
Okay, so I'm looking and I don't see anything different. You had the LED in there before, right?
Right. I already changed the LEDs in the headlights to warm white LEDs, which I think look better because the original ones were kind of orangey. And I didn't like that. I also added the little brass number 7 in the number plate.
Okay, that makes sense because it wasn't numbered before, right?
Right. And that actually is a piece of brass. I forget which... I forget if it's Trackside Miniatures. I think it's Trackside Miniatures sells numbers like that.
It looks really good.
Yeah. And then I also, because a long time ago I ditched the original Bachmann truck-mounted couplers and body-mounted Cadies on this thing, which use these are the original Bachmann Lincoln pin things that they had on the front.
Right, that gives you the ability to make it higher or lower, right?
Right. So in order to match the Cadie gauge, I had to put the Cadie in the lowest one. Now, I did some modifications, too. I put some shims in here so the coupler doesn't bounce up and down so much, because if you just stick them in here, they tend to flex vertically a lot, and they don't always stay coupled to other things very well. So by adding some washers as shims, I was able to minimize that. Also, I added this extra beam across the bottom, because originally just had these upper two, which are plastic. And then this one here is a piece of wood that I found, which actually is the same size.
Yeah, it fits right in.
So I cut it and painted it black, and it's screwed to the bottom of the other one, so it's pretty solid.
Yeah, I don't know if it turns out on the camera as well as it does in person, but it's a different black. Did you notice?
Well, it is slightly because it's wood.
It looks more like gray.
Yeah, I think it's just I guess it is slightly different, but
Yeah, I'm not complaining.
It's different material.
There's something prototypical about that too, because maybe they added it, or maybe the one that was on it broke, right?
Right. So I did pretty much the same thing on the rear end. The extra beam down under the pilot beams and the coupler modifications.
Yeah, that extra wood looks a little different on this side too.
Yeah, those are KD 901 couplers, which are the newer style that look just like real ones pretty much.
They do. Yeah. I mean, except for the trip pin, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah, except for that. So another change I made to this is internal. And if you saw the original Dan's Models episode where we put battery in this, we had originally used a 1.5 amp airwire converter board and then a DCC booster board.
Right. I remember that. There was a booster.
Right. And the Loxound decoder. Well, the Loxound decoder is still here, but I replaced all of that other stuff with just one of these new 6 amp converter boards.
So that just bypasses the need for the booster thing?
Yeah, it does all of that in one unit. And it's also solved a couple of problems that I was having. I don't know if AirWire upgraded their board or what, but when I first had this Shay running on battery power, I would experience loss of control sometimes.
Is that why you walked around with the remote right over it constantly?
Right, because the train would just basically stop, which was very odd, because they're supposed to keep going if they have no signal or keep doing whatever they were doing before they lost signal, and it would just stop.
Yeah.
And the other thing was I was getting this odd intermittent crackling noise when the audio was turned on.
I remember it sounded like static, huh?
Yeah, and with this board, it doesn't do either of those things anymore. I don't have the control problems, and the audio is perfect. So
the audio is quite nice.
Yeah, this thing sounds really good. So it was definitely worth it to do that, and it also cleaned up the inside of the, fuel bunker here a little bit.
Sure, one less component is always good.
Right. So now I can use that DCC booster on a future layout or something where I might need that.
Well, it seems like another completed model, right? I mean, and we know it runs, right? Because last time we were at Fern Creek and Western, it did a really good job. It worked all day.
Yeah.
Right? The battery lasted the whole time.
Yeah, I'm really amazed at the battery life on these things. They'll go for hours and hours.
Yeah. So I tell you what, I filmed some really nice run-bys of this thing at the Fern Creek and Western last time. Let's take a look at them as we go away.
Okay.
I'll see you next time.
Oh, you can use some of it, can't you?